anytime you give some weasel a tiny little bit of power over their fellow man, like the power to monitor social media accounts and get them in trouble, we it appeals to our baser instincts to be nasty when you give people that kind of power.
Human Nature, a journey in search of a peaceful and prosperous society with human nature as a guide. Led by your host, Adam Heyman.
Hello and welcome to Human Nature. Greetings, Tyrone. How are you?
Hey, what's up, Adam?
I just heard of the creepiest thing in the world.
Oh.
The Denver Broncos just kicked out one of their fans, one of their longtime fans, from the rest of the games of the season and of the next season because they didn't like a post that fan put on social media.
What?
Isn't that crazy?
Wait,
you ever heard of such a thing?
No, wait. In America, that happened?
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. No, wait. I confused the details a little bit. It didn't happen here. But that exact same thing did happen just across the pond in a lovely Bonnie Old England. Some football, soccer, whatever they call it over there. Some team is apparently screening all the social media accounts of all their fans and finding things that people say that they disagree with, not violent things, just things, and kicking them out of the stadium forever.
Wow.
Yeah? Creepy?
Yeah, little creepy.
So this involves a lady named Lindsay Smith, who's become something of a celebrity over there, who had she lives like 10 miles down the road from her favorite team in something called the Premier League, which I assume is a football league. Her favorite team is
Oh my God, dude. I'm gonna have to give you some sports education one of these days.
What about the football?
That's right. Yes, the Premier League. That's the top. That's the top of English soccer. All right,
it's right there in the name. The Premier League. So anyway, this poor lady, Lindsay Smith, her favorite team is Newcastle United in again the Premier League.
The Premier League, yes,
over there in England. And she got herself on the Twitter X talking about her views on the trans issue. She thinks that men actually are men, no matter what they decide in the shower one day, no matter what hormones they take, no matter what surgeries they take, and that possibly mutilating yourself based on a confusion of what sex you are is maybe a mental illness. And this is just a working class lady, a lesbian, if these sorts of identity markers impact how you feel about this person. And so, A, it's creepy that this club would do this to her, but B, it's even creepier that they have a surveillance program initiated by which they screen their fans for wrong think and punish them for exhibiting said wrong think. So what the hell do you think about that? It ain't the Broncos exactly. It's whatever silly foot game ball that they play over there, but it's still pretty creepy.
Yeah. No, so joking aside, we're actually basing this episode off of another one of your excellent articles that you wrote around this topic, and man, where to begin? I think there's a little bit of positivity that we can take from this, but let's start with the creepiest stuff. So just so we're clear, this individual is a huge fan of this Premier Soccer League. She has season tickets. She's been going her whole life, right? It's her favorite club, her favorite sports team. She's a season ticket holder or whatever their version of that is. And as a season ticket holder, I guess, no one ever reads the fine print of any of this stuff that you sign when you buy a ticket. If you ever go to a baseball game, on the back of the ticket, it says, hey, if you get hit by a foul ball and die, it's not on us, right? So they have all this kind of disclaimer stuff in there. And so I would like to see where they're getting the legal justification for this, but there's probably some, I don't know, fine print that said, hey, if you buy a season ticket and give us your email address, we now have the quote unquote legal right to spy on you. So they're monitoring her Facebook posts or whatever, her Twitter posts in this case, X posts. And she tweeted something of her own opinion, not about the team, not about soccer, not about anything related at all. Whatever your feelings are about this particular issue, the team banned her for like 3 years because she said something they didn't like. I mean, so the surveillance piece is terrifying. That what happened to a business just trying to sell a product to a customer? I mean, can you imagine going into a store? And unfortunately, I think this is actually the way things are going, and it's super unfortunate. But can you imagine walking into, let's say, some little antique store, and you're shopping around for some an antique lamp or whatever the case may be, and you bring it up to the counter, and you're about to purchase the lamp. But before you hand over your credit card to the owner of the store, you ask them, "Who did you vote for in the last election?" And if they don't answer the way that you voted, you say, "Oh, I'm not going to buy this today. I'm not going to ever come back to your business." And, and what if the reverse happened? In order to make the purchase, the business owner says, "Who did you vote for in the last election?" "Oh, you voted for a Republican? Well, I'm not going to sell this to you."
I like to think that said business, Tyrone, would simply charge an 18% upcharge.
Yeah, well,
We'll still
whatever. But
sell
I
you the
mean,
lamp.
if you're in the antiques business, you're in the business of selling antiques. Who do you care what the political leanings of your customer are? And if you're in the antique buying business, who do you care who you buy it from, what their political views are? So the
Well, you
fact that this football club is wasting money and resources on spying on their own fans who are paying them money, basically saying, we don't want your business. This is so out of whack of how any sort of business relationship should work. I don't even know where to begin.
Well, you
And
bring up
go ahead.
several great points. The biggest one is, how on earth did this policy come to be? It doesn't make any financial sense. You waste resources, you alienate your customers, you get at least one less customer. How on earth did this ridiculous policy become a thing that's enshrined not just in Newcastle, but in the entire league? Uh, and I don't have any evidence at all for the following hypothesis, and yet I would bet a whole lot of money that this is exactly how it happened. If you've been following soccer over there, and indeed in the world, you will have noticed that basically the only time you hear about the game over here in the States is when, back in the 2000s and 90s and 80s, you'd see some incredibly violent riot over either the winning or the losing of someone's favorite football team. The soccer hooligan, was a trope. We learned that for some reason these fans get really drunk and get really rowdy and real emotional and really destructive over their team winning or losing. So one could imagine, just for the interests of the safety of their other customers, this business, this antique shop, this football league, saying, well, maybe it'd be wise if we could sort of get a heads up on who the violent people were. Maybe watch them coordinating their actions to get violent. And so then you can imagine some junior executive. I flesh it out in this little article I wrote. It says, I imagine some enterprising young exec saying, let's offer our fans something for free on social media, and when they opt in, we get their social media info. Then we can monitor them for signs of future violent behavior and take proactive measures. Smart. The fans give over their information voluntarily, and there, not on the back of the ticket, but right there is where you get the fine print on what they're gonna do with this information. And then once you have that kind of power, what did Lord Acton say? It corrupts. And so if you've got the power to oust people for being violent, well, why stop there? Don't you want the right kind of people with the right kind of thoughts as your fan base? Why stop with violence? This is hate speech after all. So let's root that out while we're at it. We have this tool after all. We have this social media surveillance tool. We'd be stupid, irresponsible even not to use it. I bet it came because they were looking for violence.
Which is funny because isn't that sort of their whole brand? It's like, it's like people go to a hockey game for what? To watch the game? No, they want to see the fight, man.
It's
It's
the
like,
fights.
but I want to stick on this economic point because I really think this gets to the heart of something that's been on my mind for a while now. If your business can afford to be picky about its customers and actually just turn away customers based on political ideology, and your business still survives, something is wrong with the economic system, and it makes you wonder. Well, how can a business afford to turn away any paying customer? Certainly, that small antique shop couldn't afford to turn away a customer, right? They need every sale they can get. So, how is it possible that you scale that up to a professional soccer club or football team or any sports franchise or any big business for that matter? And how can they afford to turn away customers? And not only just turn away one customer, but to spend probably hundreds of thousands of pounds on this surveillance effort that they're doing. Shouldn't you be selling like concessions and t-shirts and memorabilia and tickets to the game? And look at the sports teams in America. They're not building the stadiums with their own money. It's all
Right.
taxpayer funded. Well, when you got the government, when the government's got your back, you can afford to turn away customers. They could run those games without any people in the stadium at all, probably,
You
and
bring
still
up
make
a
tons of money.
you bring up a great point, and as soon as I saw this, I immediately suspected, again without a shred of evidence, but you don't see actions this perverse without some sort of government intrusion into a free market, changing behavior to make it look weird. And I can easily imagine the following. And again, I have no proof, but I'd bet money something like this is going on. This woman looked like, just basing it off a picture and an interview and how she describes herself. She just looks like a working class chick. And these are very popular sports in this town, and these stadiums are only yay big. They can only fit so many people in there. And I'm wondering, well, how in the world does this person have season tickets? And I would bet that it is some form of allotment system by which, in order to get some government tax break or blah, 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 maybe to get the stadium financed, you've got to give X% of the tickets to people who are local in the community. You've seen laws exactly like this in various sports franchises and stadiums in this country. I bet something like that is going on there. And if that's the case, I bet you'd see behavior by the business owner the way we'd see building owners behaving in a rent controlled area, where you've got somebody there who's in a rent controlled apartment and you can't kick them out. But as long as they're there, you're going to get a rent that was negotiated several decades ago that has nothing to do with the true market price of that piece of real estate. Well, if you're an evil sort, you might try to scare them out of the building. You might not maintain the building and are trying to drive them out. Maybe you'll even set a damn fire. And if you're wondering why this league or this Newcastle, whatever their name is, this football club, why they're spending so much time and resources trying to find a reason, a good legitimate reason to kick this lady out of her season tickets. Well, maybe it's just that. Maybe if you get rid of her, you can sell it to someone who can pay a higher price. I mean, I don't have any evidence that that's true, but it is weird behavior. It goes against the economic interest, and usually when that happens, there's some sort of government action muddying the waters here, and I bet it's something like that.
Okay. Let's look into that. We can be journalists, Adam.
That's
But yeah, you're
impossible. I
you're
still
right.
have a human soul, Tyrone. I can't be a journalist.
No, government influence distorts markets. It's as simple as that. In a free market, people just exchange with voluntarily
Yep.
among themselves, and it's peaceful. It's transactional. It's a win-win. But when government starts meddling, then all of a sudden, um, these identitarian politics can start to rear their
Or
ugly head.
whatever. I mean, I'm sure they were looking for any good reason, right? If my hypothesis, again, no shred of
Sure.
proof,
I mean, who
if
knows?
that's true, if it's not that, then it's just what I mentioned before. Anytime you give some cretin, anytime you give some weasel a tiny little bit of power over their fellow man, like the power to monitor social media accounts and get them in trouble, we it appeals to our baser instincts to be nasty when you give people that kind of power. So maybe it's just something like that. Maybe it's petty. Maybe it's just wokeness or whatever. But I would be surprised if there wasn't some deeper economic incentive here. And for that, you look to government.
Probably next to the Mises Institute is one of my favorite organizations is Foundation for Economic Education. And in your article, you had linked to an article from them. So we'll put that link. We'll put both links in. They did a really nice write up about this, and then they also linked to a YouTube video. We'll play a little bit of that.
My name's Toby Young. I'm the General Secretary of the Free Speech Union, a mass membership public interest body that stands up for the speech rights of its members and campaigns for free speech more widely. In the 4 years since I set up the company, I've come across some pretty appalling examples of private companies punishing their employees and their customers simply for exercising their lawful right to free speech. But the most egregious example I've come across so far involves the company in this building, right behind me in Paddington, the Premier League. If you think the Premier League isn't interested in the political views of football fans, think again. We've discovered there's a secret intelligence agency embedded in the Premier League whose job it is to spy on football fans, to monitor their social media accounts, to find out if they're engaging in wrongthink. And if they are, that agency passes on that information to Premier League clubs, and those fans can find themselves banned from the stadiums. This is the story of the Stadium Stasi. So when did you find out that Newcastle had placed you under investigation?
It was the 1st of November. There was an email from the security complaints saying that I was under investigation for a hate crime, and for that reason they'd had to suspend my membership.
And when did you find out exactly what this hate crime was that you'd supposedly committed?
And eventually they gave in and said, sent me an email saying that I'd posted on social media things that could be seen as transphobic. So that was pretty much all I got,
But what you'd said wasn't what people would normally consider hate speech, let
No.
alone a hate crime. You'd said things like you didn't think trans women were women, you didn't think if you were born with a penis that you could self-identify or become a woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty much. I said trans women are men, and I said I'll be able to say I never stood by that and never accepted it. And that's another one I was questioned for. So,
given that you hadn't said anything that would normally be classed as hate speech, presumably you thought that it'll be cleared up and it'll just go away. But what actually happened?
I was banned for the rest of this season and the next 2. So
just to be clear, because you expressed your gender-critical beliefs on Twitter, Newcastle has banned you for the rest of this season and for 2 more seasons.
yeah,
And how do you feel about that?
devastated. Just devastated. I mean, I live 10 minutes away. I struggle to even come near the ground now, to be honest with you. I get upset when I talk about it because I just don't understand where it's come from, I don't understand why someone's gotten so offended by me just speaking my mind. I don't get it, but I avoid the city now. I avoid it, especially if it's a match day. If I'm going home, I'll drive the long way round so I don't have to see people. I won't even come down here and drink anymore. I used to always be in Shearer's over the road, or I'd be in the Strawberry. I can't even bring myself to do that. Every time I come round here now, I'm just sick to my stomach. And I'm afraid of who's around, who's watching me, you know. So it's just horrible.
And one of the really shocking aspects of your case is that you got back a cache of documents, including quite a big file that had been compiled on you by some shadowy spy agency connected to the Premier League, which had an extraordinary amount of detail about your life in it. Just tell me about that and how you reacted to that.
That just had me sick to my stomach. To be fair, I didn't even see that immediately, because when I originally got it back, it was the emails I was interested in. So it wasn't until a few days later I actually looked through the rest of it and I saw that Premier League report. And they basically referred to me as a target. They've tried to find my identity. They've tried to find where I live. They even went as far as to get screenshots off my Twitter. They searched in the search bar, "I live," to find anywhere I've said where I live. Took images of me where I used to walk my dog behind my house. Got Google images of the church there and the park that's there. I mean, it's horrible. Like saying I've got ties to Whitley Bay because I work down there. I just don't see what any of that has to do with any of it. And I don't know who's seeing that information, you know? Like, I only live down the road. It's really quite frightening because I don't know who's seen it now. I don't know who knows where I live or knows where I walk around, you know? Anyone could be waiting there. Anyone, and it is quite frightening. Like, I don't feel safe walking around where I live anymore because I don't know who's around, who's seen anything. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Just want to read something real quick from the Fee article that I think kind of captures the gist of the story. They write, historically, efforts to control speech have been employed by those with power to cement their own control. Those with power tend to be those in government and those closest to it. And it is they and their supporters who get to decide what speech qualifies as hate and misinformation. That the view that dangerous, hateful, or fascist speech should be allowed. No free speech for fascists, the title of a 2021 book declares, is itself a deeply fascistic view. This is evidenced in no small part by the fact that the most notable fascist states of the 20th century despised free expression and free speech, which undermined their stated and actual goals. The fact that many governments, including the United States, are now outsourcing their policing of language to private companies and institutions that share their views on what constitutes hate speech and misinformation is not a sign of progress. It's but a pivot by authoritarians in their effort to control what is seen as true and false.
Yeah, as usual, Fee, the Foundation for Economic Education, just nails it. These hate speech laws, anything that violates free speech is going to be like a snake eating its own tail. You do not get to define what the hate speech is, what the prohibited speech is, my friends. It's going to be some politically connected person. And if you support these things, don't act shocked when those same laws are coming after you for what you said 5 years ago yourself. It's pernicious. Don't fall for it.
I think the key point to recognize is that, okay, great, we have a First Amendment in this country. Fantastic. So that means the government can't censor you. Private companies can. And that's not a violation of the First Amendment when, I don't know, Facebook takes somebody off of their platform or YouTube cancels somebody off of the YouTube. It's their business, right? That's the standard. Even libertarians will say that, right? YouTube can do whatever it wants. It's a private company. I think even libertarians are starting to wake up to the fact that this is not what the state is. The state is more than just the government. And I don't know if you share this same opinion that I do, but I'm an anti-statist. And the way I define the state is, I don't know, I suppose maybe it's the classical definition of fascism, if you want. It's just, huge corporations that have been given a monopoly corporation legal entity status by the government in exchange for donations for political actors and their campaigns or whatever.
That's the critical point you hit right there. The critical point, though, is given by the government. If truly YouTube and Facebook and whatnot were private, then I would be I would prefer that free exchange, free markets, free association solve the problem. But if we're not in a free market, and Google, for example, and Facebook and X prior to Elon, if they are influenced and controlled by government and given a quasi-monopoly and also marching orders, they weren't just deciding for themselves on how to police free speech on their platform when they're being hauled before Congress, ladies and gentlemen, and threatened with being absorbed by the FEC and more high regulations. That's not a free market, individual market actor. That is an arm of the state. So yeah, the only objection I make to your characterization of what the state is that you can't gloss over the fact that this isn't just some company that has a private policy. Because I'm for that. I might object to it, but I'm for their right to exercise their own control of their own private property. But that's not this. These are agents of the state. They have been given monopoly status, and they're being coerced. So it's always the state.
That's right. That's right. Now, what I think is possibly the most beautiful and deliciously ironic piece of this whole episode, we're talking about this Lindsay Smith who was kicked out of her membership to her soccer club. She's the L in LGBT, right? So this is what happens eventually. The whole thing just starts to splinter, and the coalition breaks down and starts, as you said, the snake starts eating its own tail, and this whole thing is just starting to come apart at the seams.
It's like the great Dave Chappelle told us: the LG and B are starting to get a little sick and tired of the T.
Yep.
And it just never ends. No matter how woke you think you are, no matter how justified you are in fighting for the rights of the oppressed, if you're on the left, someone's going to come eating for you because you're never woke enough. And yeah, punishing this lesbian for violating her free speech, if they have any over there in England, because of an opinion she has about men who are invading women's bathrooms and women's prisons and women's sports and women's rape crisis shelters, for crying out loud. Yes, that's a real thing. Yeah, you got to give this lady the freedom to speak her mind, because speaking is thinking, and you don't want the government or some stupid soccer club in England violating your ability to think.
Well, Lindsay, if you see this, you're welcome to come support a real football team, the Minnesota Vikings, and we're going to the Super Bowl this year. Woo!
Woo! All right. Well, thanks, Tyrone, for being on another great episode. I'd also like to apologize to my beloved Denver Broncos for that horrible slur I made upon their character at the opening. I was just making an analogy, trying to bring it home. That Matthew McConaughey bit, now imagine that little girl was white. Time to Kill.
What are you talking about?
You never watched A Time to Kill, the Grisham novel, immortalized in film?
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, I've seen it, the movie, I guess, but
So
right.
maybe you don't care about English football, but what if this happened in a Broncos stadium, for crying out loud? Anyway,
Sure.
Thank you, Tyrone. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching, and we'll catch you on Heyman Nature next time.